Well, speaking of income, we had another typically crass comment from Boris Johnson at the Conservative Party Spring Conference on Saturday. The general view is that people have had quite a few days off. Like it's all been a jolly holiday for everybody, and we've all been sitting around our imaginary pools. This is contrary to official advice that people should work from home if possible. That is the government's own official advice. Where is this coming from? Is he just talking off the cuff again? Is it another sort of Telegraph column in the works, scribbled on his cuff?
I think that's exactly what it is. I just think like these moments, you get the same when, that hospital, right at the beginning of this thing where he said, I shook everyone's hand in hospital, kind of proudly going against those, those cretinous scientists who don't know what they're talking about. They're all hysterics. Like they are the moments that reveal his proper disposition. And I just thought, like when he said it, I mean, I got angry about this comment I think I felt just 12 hours solid, because it was just, if you have any connection with what things are actually like in this country. And the people who have kept their job are working extremely fucking hard. The people I know who are going through some of the hardest times are also people that have lost their job. And so even when there's income coming in, there's just this utter aimlessness that's imposed on you. But putting that to one side, the people who have got a job and kids, everyone I know that has a job and kids has never worked harder before in their fucking life. Well, they've basically suddenly been given a second additional job of educate your child. So everyone's doing twice as much in the same amount of time. For him to come out and do this shit is so annoying. I can barely come up with the words to fully fucking describe it. And it speaks to that kind of instinctive Tory, they're all trying to, just bunk off. People are, that old sort of Britannia Unchained. Oh, the Brits are so lazy. You've got to keep your fucking eye on them, don't you? Whereas, you never know what the lower classes will get up to. That's essentially where his head's at. And in it, you get that sense of what he would be if he wasn't prime minister, right? Like, imagine that he wasn't prime minister. Imagine he was still on the backbench and Theresa May was prime minister when this thing happened.
Yeah.
What would he be doing? Of course, he'd be in the fucking CRG. Whether by membership or whether just by shouting his mouth off. Of course, he'd be writing articles in the Telegraph about how this.
He'd have elected himself leader of the CRG. He'd have decided he was the leader of the CRG.
Firstly, it would be the way to get the spotlight, right? And then secondly, it corresponds to every fucking instinct he has ever had, against the nanny state, ancient English liberties, but not really actually ever standing up for people's actual human rights or their individual freedom. But just that kind of fuzzy sense of, I'll smoke my fag if I want to, and blah, blah, blah. All of that, it corresponds exactly. And then, by virtue of that, and these comments still coming out now, you see that inner division in his mind when it's come to this pandemic that's constantly about his instinct, which is, this is all load of ruddy fucking foreign nonsense. And the bits where he's getting briefings from people going, if you don't do this, then hundreds of thousands of people are going to die. And those delays over and over again on first lockdown, on second lockdown, on third lockdown, those 2-week to 6-week delays on various proposals, that comes down to that fucking division that he has in his mind, which is then reflected in cabinet. So what you're seeing when you hear that, when you hear him talk that way, is it writ large in the sky why tens of thousands of people died that didn't have to die, because he's got this mucky, pointless, reactionary shite bubbling around in his head, and it has slowed down government policymaking.